More discussion of Derek Favors' future. If you were Paul Millsap's agent reading this, what would you do? What is the latest on Raja? Some football talk with the Utes and the Cougars. Remember that guy, Greg Oden? Would you? It's all next on today's edition of Tip Off. Boom, 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 boom. Tiger Woods. Boom, 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 boom. When is it like not even a story anymore? Boom, 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 boom. How long do we keep asking? Willie, 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 Willie? Boom, 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 boom. And how soon do we just say, oh, he's one of them? Boom, 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 boom. He's no different than the rest. Boom, 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 boom. It is tip off. You know, I think it's interesting on that Tiger front for a quick second. Is I get why it's a story. I still think it's valid. We were wondering. It's one of the first things you check. I now check the front of the leaderboard before I check what Tiger's doing. And so I do think, but I kind of wonder, like, how long are we playing this game? There's two things I think are worth kind of noting on Tiger. One is his lasting impact, and the other is what we're asking him to do. The lasting impact issue is we, as sports fans, do this all the time. We had a Jordan, who was just this incredible thing that won 6 titles out of 8 years and was unbeatable, etc. And so then we compare everybody to Jordan. And what happens more often than not is that in the way sports in progress works is actually the next guy is better. But in the case of Jordan and the case of Tiger, I'm not sure that the next guy really can be better. And what's disappointing about that is Rory McIlroy has 2 majors at an age younger than Tiger. And yet for most of the year we've referred to him as a disappointment. It's as though because of the past successes and that we're always then judging the next guy. And we can't accept anyone just to be who they are or great. They have to be as great as the previous guy. That we're kind of missing the boat sometimes on McIlroy or some of these other guys. You know, there's some golfers out there that are having some pretty fabulous years that we're simply just not, and careers that just aren't getting a lot of talk because they're overshadowed. Secondly, on Tiger, I thought either Brian Taylor or Bob Casper presented this with DJ and PK 1280 The Zone, and they really were quite good from the PGA Championship, is that for Tiger to win 5 more majors, that's a Hall of Fame career from this point on. And I'm just not sure if you watch this golfer right now, you believe he's about to have a Hall of Fame career. I think he'll win another major just because he wins a lot of tournaments. But then his whole quote the other day about the fact that he was mentally had the wrong approach just shows you how far off he is. All right, so a lot of research has been done on Derek Favors, and I thought it was very positive. I mean, simply players that get as much exposure as he does at this age explode right about now. And there has been this continual conversation about minutes and this and that. And I'd be stunned if it's an issue this year. And I ran through some of the guys last night, or yesterday, in tip-off, and I don't want to repeat myself. But then some of the other ones, Amari Stoudemire played 2,500 minutes his rookie season. So he was then, whereas Favors entered at 19, he played 2,900 in his first 2 years. They are both the same age with the same amount of experience going into what was Amari's second year, and he went from a 14.9 rebound guy, which is bigger than what Favors was, to a 20.9 rebound guy. And then he went bananas in year 3. And I don't think Favors has some of the offensive skills Amari, but if you remember at that age, Amari was really not the shooter that he is now. He was pretty much just athletic. What jumped out to me on Amari and Favors is per 36 minutes at the end of last year just alone, Favors was at 15 points, 11 rebounds. After Amari's rookie year, he was at 15.5 points and 10 rebounds. Those are the same numbers. In that next season, Amari jumped to 20 points per 36 minutes. And then to 26 points the year after. I'm not sure Favors has all those bag of tricks, but he's not that far off. I have felt the whole time that I've seen him that he's a little Amari, he's a little Dwight Howard, and I think he's that good. So for a lot of these discussion points, I think that the where he might go is pretty amazing. And Brook Lopez, who's not a similar player at all, jumped from 13 points to 19 points a game in his second year after he'd had those minutes. His rebounding decreased. And then I think I mentioned yesterday Eddie Curry's a pretty good one. Nene stabilized but had a bunch of issues, and Spencer Hawes is really the only one who didn't progress. I mean, there's a real chance that Derek Favors, this is a huge expectation, but there's a real chance that Derek Favors is 20 points a game next year if he just gets, we'll run so much stuff through Jefferson. I don't think that can happen. But I do think he's a real chance he's 16 and 11. It's pretty fabulous. There is an ongoing discussion criticizing Tyrone for the minutes used by Tyrone last year for Derek Favors. And I don't think there's any question that everyone would have liked to see Favors more, including Tyrone. But can I just remind everybody some facts in this discussion? Tyrone started Derek Favors to open the year. In his first full season as a head coach, he went to Millsap and put him on the bench. Pretty gutsy, controversial move. And Favors wasn't ready, and the team was a mess and lost the first 2 games by 30. And so Ty switched back to Millsap at that point. Favors was getting in such foul trouble, screwing up the rotation anyway. And Millsap was then great. Remember, he was almost an all-star. So the next point gets to be, now you're halfway through the season. Favors has progressed, and we have 30 games left in this crazy season with almost no practice time. And there's no question Favors at that point probably deserved more time on the floor. But how? Like, that's the one thing I haven't seen anybody address in any of these discussions yet. How? Jefferson was playing, at that point, had improved. Millsap was slumping, but you've already somewhat lost Millsap and brought him back once this year. He's vital to the team. We now know, which, some of us knew at the time, but we now know that you have a Raja Bell incident in Philly where the team is significant, and you have some other guys that are griping. Ty's holding the locker room together and getting the team into the playoffs. So, again, and everyone likes to go to that 4 overtime game, and again, who are you humiliating, and what's the long-term impact of that in that season? And that's all Tyrone's doing as a coach, is trying to get that season through that season. We can all discuss as fans how we want long-term development, and Burks and Canner need minutes. Burks and Canner are going to get minutes this year. If Canner's playing well enough that the Jazz have a chance to win when he's on the floor, and a better chance to win by having Jefferson get some rest, Burks is going to get minutes if he's better than the other guys. But no one's getting minutes because they want to develop. Okay? Ty's not going to do it. It's not what the organization wants, and Ty wants to keep his job. So, with all this said, back to Favors for a second. It's very clear when we look at this, Favors is on the verge of an explosion. There's no, it would be stunning if he doesn't. It's pretty clear he's going to be probably 16 and 12, 16 and 11, something huge like that. And that's a 35-minute-a-night guy. Jefferson we run our post offense. We're going into the post to Jefferson more often than not. That's a 30-minute-a-night guy. And as we've documented, this is a major minutes problem for the Utah Jazz. And I wrote something up about this. And really the only way Millsap gets anywhere close to the 30 minutes well, first of all, Millsap doesn't get close to the 30 minutes he played, even though he was probably the best player on the team last year for much of the season. It just doesn't work. So Millsap's probably down to 26, 27. Then, from there, you have Millsap to get those 27. Sorry, I was doing some math in my head. At 26, has probably 13 to 15 minutes a night at power forward and 13 to 15 minutes a night at small forward. If there's even, that's hard to do. So that's really changing everything of who Paul Millsap is, how he plays. I think he very likely becomes an off the bench 25 to 28 minute a night guy, splitting time between those two, to no fault of his own, but just the reality. If you're Paul's agent right now, and you realize that you have to see this, don't you? I mean, you can't. I know you love your client, you believe in your guy, and he was so good. And you can keep saying, "Well, I mean, he had a great year last year," but don't you see that? And so then that leads to one of two questions. One of two conclusions. Shouldn't you take that extension that the Jazz offered? Sure, it's for a little less money than maybe you believe at this moment if you went out on the market and you could go get it. Like I think was what Anderson got about $8.5 million, and Paul's is for somewhere around $7. It's the max the Jazz can offer you. It's a nice commitment, but there's a chance you're playing 24 minutes a night next year, and you could end up with a 2-year 12 from somebody on the open market, isn't there? I mean, that's one scenario that if I'm looking at the way these minutes play and the way this season's going to be and how difficult it's going to be to get time and Favors development and Jefferson in the post as a scorer, don't I take that extension on the fear that I'm not going to get a lot of time? I'm suddenly going to come Brandon Bass, not get the money I want out of Paul Millsap. And that my image of the league is suddenly going to be that I'm a backup, maybe even a backup tweener, not a starter. Or the other side is as long as Favors is here, I will never be the starting power forward. And therefore, regardless of whether it's the right move to take the extension, I want to go on the open market because I want to get out. And I want to go play. I don't know which of those two scenarios exist and is accurate. But if I were Paul's agent, that's the conversation I'd be having. If you want to stay in Utah, or if you just want to take the most secure, maybe safest money route, let's do this. Understand there's a chance the market's drying up. You're not going to get as much, but at least you may be able to go somewhere you get time. I just think it's an interesting moment. People are asking about Raja. What happened with Raja is very clear. He agreed to a buyout with the Jazz under the presumption that he was going to get signed by somebody. Therefore, when he got signed by somebody, he was going to be able to get that money. Raja's and his staff must have had such a esteemed view of himself that he thought there'd be multiple bidders, and so he didn't want to get caught in the waiver system if he got amnestied. And so he went down the track of getting a buyout, and then, as it turns out, there are no bidders. So he doesn't want a buyout because he's going to lose like $1.3 million on the buyout or $1 million something on the buyout, which he doesn't have a chance to replace. I mean, or the other scenario is that he completely lied, completely snookered the Jazz during amnesty just to make sure he wasn't amnestied. I don't understand. The Jazz didn't have any real advantage to amnestying Raja, by the way. We're not about to go over the luxury tax. We would still have to pay him. It's not like we saved the money. You just saved the cap space. So there was real no advantage. What happens now? Frankly, I don't think anything happens. If Raja doesn't have a team to go to, I suspect that the Jazz just hold on to him. May tell him not to come to camp, and hold on to his $3 million salary, which they have to pay. There's no scenario where they're not paying it unless they trade him. And they wait and see. Is there a team out there that suddenly gets, like Sacramento, that gets under the minimum and has to add $3 million at the last second so that they don't go under the minimum salary, and they take Raja for a second-round pick, and the Jazz actually save some money on that? What is there? What are the scenarios? But there's no reason for the Jazz just to release him unless there's a buyout agreement. So that's where we sit. Quick thought on Utes football. There's a lot of discussion about offensive line, all this. Here's what I think is interesting. Utah has continually talked about how they are going to be able to knock, and they've been able to knock on bigger, different doors than they've knocked on previously because of the fact they're in the Pac-12. But the essence of Kyle Whittingham football over the last decade has been that grind and that grit and that development of the unsung guy, whether it's the Kruger or the Koemisi, the guy who doesn't come in with all the accolades. He puts on 40 or 50 pounds because of his work ethic, and he takes his skills and puts them into a position, and he becomes a star. And then plays with this chip on his shoulder because of where he came from and who he is. And that's been the essence of Utah football and the culture of it. Now they're able to go knock on doors and bring in more talented, high-level players who have a little higher expectation of what they're going to get and probably don't think they're as close to the need for development as they were as some of these other guys. How does the Utah culture hold through that? That, to me, is the essence of where this football program is. Sure, their offensive tackles need to do more or else they're going to be in a lot of problems. And sure, they got young quarterbacks coming and their safety, this and that. But really, that's where this program is. Right now, it all seems as though there's good chemistry and all that. But let's watch. To me, that's the essence of where this team is. That they generally have played every day. That they generally have had very few malcontents. They have had amazing development out of young players at various positions. And they've been able to play inside of a style and system of guys that are able to just ball. Will they be able to maintain that with this should seemingly be a higher level of recruit, but that also comes with presumptions of expectation by those players that the others did not have. There's my thought for you. All right, hope everyone's good. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.